Okay, I should know better than to promise any sort of schedule. These things will be done when they're done. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start work on figuring out how we can actually play the set, so we can have fun with it without the need to wait for my undiagnosed neurodivergencies to align in just the right way to be able to focus on this project. As always, huge thanks to MarshalKylen. He ended up doing most of the cards for this batch as I was busy with Life and Stars of the City. A few adjustments from the last batch first. Online Casino has been replaced by Rack Up Some Scores, and Samjo, Loyal Secretary, now has a slightly different conditional for his exile ability. Next, some cards that belong to the previous batch in terms of story progression, but that were either put off because we didn't have them ready at the time or because I forgot to put them in the video. Berry Under Flowers is a reflavor of the classic Path to Exile. Shren, TLA Sympathizer, lets you draw a card while also giving the same benefit to an opponent of your choice, if you want to get political in your commander games. K-Corp Excision Staff gets stronger over time as cards are put into graveyards, and is harder to block the more +1/+1 tokens it has. It's also nearly immortal, as long as you can keep feeding it cards. Suspension Tube lets you save your creatures from death and instead put them in the tube to cast later. Hacked Regen Drone lets you force enemy units to attack each other, or in a 1v1 format, force an enemy to attack you even if they don't want to. Okay, onto the fun things for this new batch. As we move into the Fathoms of Ego, we have a whole bunch of Abnos and their related ego that I'm going to cover all at once. So That No One Will Cry is a red-green Abno that gives enemies some +1/+1 counters, but then allows you to steal those counters to power up your own minions if they try to attack you. Shock Centipede enters with charge counters for every artifact you control, and can discharge to become indestructible for the turn. AEDD is an aura that grants more charge with enough artifacts, and as it attacks, charges itself and an allied creature. It also has the same discharge effect as the Centipede. Fairy Gentleman is a sort of group hug unit that grants food, but forces enemies to sacrifice that food if they have too much. When this happens, he forces card draw and lets you make the creatures tipsy. A tipsy creature can then be goaded into attacking. Finally, Drifting Fox uses shield counters, +1/+1 counters, and a general synergy between various counters to mill out opponents. Sun Shower is a full board clear that can be overclocked to protect creatures on your side. Before we get to Yi-Sang's past, let's cover the story of the Tearful Thing, starting with Stefanet's Journey, a saga that helps to ramp and continues graveyard and life gain synergies. Tears from the Stars is similar self-mill, life gain, and bringing cards back from the graveyard. Finally, the Tearful Thing itself is considered an artifact for simplicity, and has you gaining life for each card put into graveyards, and you can use that life to grant indestructible to creatures, or to remove it. As we reminisce on the League of Nine, we see the Joy of Discovery, which lets you seek from the top of your deck, either fetching a card from among those revealed, or taking an artifact from it and copying it until you get your mana's worth. Yon Sim, the Mirror, is an artifact that lets you have creatures enter as copies of exiled creatures instead of themselves. I think this is a very nice way to get across identities without overcomplicating things. The concept Incinerator is a weird one that hasn't been fully pinned down, but here are some versions we've been thinking of. Obviously, it deletes artifacts and enchantments, shutting them down completely, but it's still an awkward effect that we need to test a bit more. We also have another Yi-Sang, this time as the Mirror Maker, which has the legend rule not apply to your creatures and gives your copies flying. It also lets you double your creatures when they enter, if you can pay the mana or you have artifacts to tap. Finally, Recruit a Sinner searches for a legendary creature, and either puts it in your hand if it's a Sinner, or on top of your library if it isn't. Returning to K-Corp's atrocities, we have the Glass Window, which gives great control over card draw, as you surveil first in order to get things into your graveyard. And now, we're ready for the final conflict, starting with the Abandoned Calf, which creates a food when it dies or is discarded. Dongrang is a complex one, so buckle up. When he enters, he causes a mass sacrifice, and you make food. When you gain life, you may mill cards. Once you have 10 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform Dongrang. Once transformed, Dongrang can damage opponents when you heal, dealing massive damage with the right setup. He can also animate food into plants for a fairly cheap cost, giving you an army of disposable minions. Finally, Fly My Wings is a saga that creates a copy of a creature, spreads sinking counters, then gives a flying counter to a creature, in addition to drawing 2 cards. Okay, that's all for now. Like I said, playtests will be coming earlier than what was originally planned, just because I lost my original crazy pace of 20 cards each week or so. Who would have thought? Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you soon.